Commander Jake Harrison stepped off the transport shuttle and felt his breath catch in his throat. Nexus Prime stretched out before him like something from a dream. The space station was massive beyond anything he had ever seen. Towers of crystal and metal reached up toward the artificial sky, while streams of flying vehicles moved between them like schools of fish. "First time seeing the Galactic Capital, Commander?" asked Dr. Patricia Wang as she joined him on the landing platform. Her voice carried the same wonder that Jake felt. "Yeah," Jake replied, still staring at the incredible sight. "Hard to believe humans built ships that could reach the stars, but we never imagined anything like this." The crew of the U.S. Horizon had been traveling for 3 months to reach this place. Earth had finally made contact with other intelligent species, and the Galactic Council had invited humanity to send representatives. It was supposed to be a simple cultural exchange. Show the aliens what humans were like, learn about their civilizations, maybe earn a place in the galactic community. Jake had been chosen to lead the mission because of his calm personality and diplomatic experience. At 35, he had served in Earth's Space Force for 15 years and handled first contact situations with various human colonies. But nothing had prepared him for this. The other members of his team gathered around him. Chief Engineer Ron Blake whistled softly as he looked at the massive structures. Security Chief Amy Davis kept her hand near her weapon out of habit, even though they had been told weapons were not needed here. Dr. Wong continued taking notes on her tablet, documenting everything she saw. "Where's Lisa?" Jake asked, looking around for their 5th team member. "Still in the shuttle, checking on the food samples," Amy replied. "She wants to make sure everything survived the journey in good condition." Lisa Martinez was the ship's cook, but she was also their cultural specialist for this mission. The Galactic Council had requested examples of human art, music, and food. Lisa had spent weeks preparing traditional dishes from different Earth cultures to share with the aliens. A tall, thin creature with blue skin and 4 arms approached their group. It wore what looked like an official uniform covered in glowing symbols. When it spoke, a small device on its chest translated the words into English. "Welcome to Nexus Prime, representatives of Earth," the alien said. "I am Guide Zenth. I will show you to your quarters and explain the schedule for your visit." Jake stepped forward and gave a slight bow, the way the diplomatic training had taught him. "Thank you, Guide Zenth. We are honored to be here." The alien's large eyes blinked in what might have been approval. "The Council is curious about your species. You are the first new members to be considered in over 50 years. As they walked through the station, Jake tried not to stare too obviously at the incredible variety of alien species around them. Some looked almost human, but with different colored skin or extra limbs. Others were so strange that Jake had trouble figuring out which end was the head. There were creatures that looked like walking trees, others that seemed to be made of living liquid metal, and some that floated through the air without any visible means of support. The diversity was overwhelming. "How many different species belong to the Council?" Dr. Wong asked, her scientific curiosity clearly excited by everything she saw. "Currently, there are 47 member species," Guide Zenth replied. "Each brings unique skills and knowledge to benefit all. That is why we consider new members so carefully." They passed through a massive plaza filled with vendors and entertainers. The sounds and smells were unlike anything from Earth. Jake watched a group of small, furry aliens performing what looked like a dance, while a crowd of other species watched and made sounds that might have been applause. "The Council wishes to see demonstrations of human capabilities over the next few days," Guide Zenth continued. "Your intelligence, creativity, and potential contributions to galactic society." Jake nodded, though he felt a bit nervous about what that might involve. Earth's technology was primitive compared to what he saw around him. Humans had barely figured out faster-than-light travel, while these species had clearly mastered it long ago. Behind them, Lisa Martinez finally emerged from the shuttle carrying a large container. She had insisted on personally transporting the most delicate food samples. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore the same uniform as the rest of the team. Sorry to keep everyone waiting, she called out. "I wanted to make sure the chocolate cake survived the trip intact." Guide Zen's translator device made several odd noises before producing words. Chocolate cake! This is a food item. One of Earth's finest desserts, Lisa said with a smile. I brought samples of cuisine from many different human cultures. Food is one of our greatest art forms. The alien guide seemed puzzled by this concept, but said nothing more. They continued walking through the plaza toward the residential section, where the human delegation would be staying. Doc Jake was so busy looking around at the incredible architecture that he did not notice the group of large aliens blocking their path until it was too late. He walked straight into one of them while carrying a tray of samples that Lisa had handed him. The collision sent the tray flying. Small containers of various Earth delicacies scattered across the floor. Worse, several containers broke open and splashed their contents across the alien Jake had bumped into. The creature was enormous, at least 8 feet tall, with green scaly skin and powerful muscles visible even through its elaborate armor. Colorful paint that had been carefully applied to its face now dripped down its chest, mixed with what looked like tomato sauce from one of Lisa's Italian dishes. The alien's yellow eyes fixed on Jake with an expression that needed no translation. Pure rage. Oh no, Guide Zenth whispered, his blue skin turning noticeably paler. Do you know what you have done? Jake looked at the mess on the floor, then at the angry alien towering over him. I'm sorry, he said quickly. I didn't see you there. Let me help clean that up. He reached toward the alien, but several other members of the same species stepped forward and blocked his path. They all wore similar armor and had the same reptilian appearance as the one Jake had bumped into. You have insulted Zethkar of the Saurian hegemony, one of them said in heavily accented English. The war paint of his ancestors now lies mixed with your primitive food waste. Jake felt his stomach drop. This was exactly the kind of diplomatic incident that Earth could not afford during their first contact with the galactic community. Please, he said, raising his hands peacefully. It was an accident. I meant no disrespect to your traditions or your people. Zethkar stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over Jake. When he spoke, his voice was deep and threatening. Accident or not, human, the insult has been given. Honor demands satisfaction. Guide Zenth moved between them, all 4 of his arms raised in a gesture that might have been meant to calm the situation. Surely we can resolve this peacefully. The humans are new here and do not understand our ways. I understand perfectly, Zethkar replied. His eyes never left Jake's face. This creature has shamed me before. Witnesses, according to the ancient laws of my people, he must answer for this insult in combat. A crowd was gathering around them now. Representatives of dozens of alien species watched with obvious interest. Jake could hear excited chattering and sounds that might have been laughter from some of the onlookers. Combat, Jake repeated, hoping he had misunderstood. Single combat, Zethkar confirmed. You will face me in the arena, human. If you defeat me, your insult is forgiven. If you lose. He did not finish the sentence, but his meaning was clear. Dr. Wong stepped forward. Commander Harrison is a diplomat, not a warrior. Surely there must be another way to resolve this. Zethkar's laugh was like the sound of grinding stone. I am Zethkar, the undefeated champion of the Galactic Combat League. I have defeated warriors from 17 different worlds. Your diplomat will have the honor of becoming my 200th victory. Jake felt the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. This was not just about his own life anymore. How humanity was viewed by the galactic community, their chances of joining the council, everything depended on what happened next. He looked at his team, seeing his own worry reflected in their faces. Lisa still held her container of food samples, her eyes wide with concern. Amy's hand had moved closer to her weapon, though Jake knew it would be useless in this situation. Dr. Wong was already pulling out her tablet, probably trying to research Saurian culture and combat practices. Ron Blake moved closer and spoke quietly in Jake's ear. You don't have to do this, Commander. We can call this whole thing off and go back to Earth. Jake considered that option for a moment. It would be the safe choice, but it would also mean that humanity's first impression on the galactic stage would be as cowards who ran away from challenges. Their chances of ever being accepted into the galactic community would be finished. He straightened his shoulders and looked directly at Zethkar. I accept your challenge. The crowd around them erupted in excited chatter. Guide Zenth made a sound that his translator could not interpret, though it sounded like distress. Zethkar's expression changed slightly, showing what might have been surprise that the human had not tried to run away. The quarters assigned to the human delegation were larger than Jake had expected, but he barely noticed the luxury around him. His mind was completely focused on the impossible task ahead. In 3 days, he would face the galaxy's most feared warrior in single combat, and he had no idea how to survive the encounter. Okay, let's figure this out, Dr. Wong said as she spread her research materials across the main table. Her tablet displayed everything she had been able to find about saurian physiology and combat techniques. We have 72 hours to find some kind of advantage. Amy Davis paced back and forth near the window that looked out over the station's central plaza. I've been thinking about this all wrong, Commander. We need to approach this like a military operation, not a fair fight. It has to be a fair fight, Jake replied from where he sat staring at his hands. The whole galactic community will be watching. If we cheat, humanity will never be trusted again. Ron Blake looked up from his own research on the room's computer terminal. I've been reading the official rules for galactic dueling. There might be some options we haven't considered yet. Lisa Martinez sat quietly in the corner, still holding the container of food samples she had been carrying when the incident happened. She had barely spoken since they returned to their quarters, and Jake could see the guilt in her eyes. This isn't your fault, Lisa, he said gently. I was the one who wasn't watching where I was going. If I hadn't given you that tray to carry, ... She started to say, then it would have happened some other way. Jake interrupted. These things happen. Now we need to focus on finding a solution. Dr. Wong cleared her throat to get everyone's attention. I've learned some disturbing facts about our opponent. Zethkar comes from a warrior culture where combat training begins in childhood. Saurian males are naturally stronger and faster than humans, with reflexes that are almost twice as quick as ours. She pulled up an image on her tablet showing the basic anatomy of a saurian warrior. They have thick, armored skin that can stop most cutting weapons. Their claws are razor sharp and can extend from their fingers when they fight. Most importantly, they have been bred for combat over thousands of generations. What about his fighting style? Amy asked, moving closer to look at the research. Traditional saurian combat focuses on overwhelming attacks. Dr. Wong continued. They try to end fights quickly, using their natural advantages in strength and speed. Most of his previous opponents never lasted more than a few minutes. Jake felt his stomach tighten as he listened to the description. Everything about this challenge seemed designed to favor his opponent. How many fights has he actually won? According to the records, Zethkar has never lost a single combat, Ron said from his position at the computer. 199 victories over the past 10 years. He's defeated warriors from 17 different species, including some that are naturally much stronger than humans. The room fell silent as the hopelessness of the situation sank in. Jake was going to be Zethkar's 200th victory, and there seemed to be nothing anyone could do to change that fact. Wait, Ron said suddenly, his voice carrying a note of excitement. I found something interesting in the dueling regulations. Each participant is allowed to choose one weapon from their homeworld's traditional armaments. Amy's eyes lit up. What kind of weapons are we talking about? That's the thing, Ron replied, scrolling through the regulations on his screen. The rules don't specify exactly what counts as a traditional weapon. Most species choose swords, energy weapons, or ceremonial combat tools that have been perfected over centuries. Jake felt a small spark of hope. So I could choose a gun. No, Dr. Wong said, shaking her head. Projectile weapons are specifically prohibited. The duel has to be hand-to-hand combat with traditional melee weapons only. The spark of hope faded as quickly as it had appeared. Jake had some basic sword training from his military service, but nothing that could match a lifetime of warrior training. What about martial arts? Lisa asked quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. I mean, humans have developed fighting techniques over thousands of years, too. Karate, boxing, wrestling. Amy nodded thoughtfully. That's true. I could teach you some basic combat moves, Commander. It won't be much, but it's better than nothing. For the next several hours, Amy put Jake through intensive training in the quarter's main room. She taught him basic punches, kicks, and defensive maneuvers, but it quickly became clear that 3 days were not enough time to turn a diplomat into a fighter. "You're too stiff," Amy said as Jake attempted a series of combat moves. "Fighting isn't just about memorizing techniques. It's about instinct and reaction time." Jake wiped sweat from his forehead and tried again. His movements were awkward and slow compared to what he would need to face Zeth. "I'm trying, but this doesn't feel natural." "That's because you're thinking too much," Amy replied. "Combat is about muscle memory and split-second decisions. You need years of practice to develop that kind of instinct." Meanwhile, Dr. Wong continued researching everything she could find about previous duels and Saurian combat techniques. Most of Zethkar's opponents tried to match him strength for strength. She reported, "That never works, because Saurians are naturally more powerful than most species." "What about the ones who use different strategies?" Ron asked. "A few tried to use speed and agility to avoid his attacks," Dr. Wong said, reading from her notes. "That worked slightly better, but Saurian reflexes are so quick that eventually he caught them all." Jake sat down heavily, exhausted from the training session. "So what you're telling me is that no strategy has ever worked against him?" "Not exactly," Dr. Wong said carefully. "I'm saying that no one has ever found the right approach. Every species that faced him tried to beat him at his own game. Maybe the answer is to play a completely different game." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "I'm not sure yet," Dr. Wong admitted, "but human history is full of examples of smaller, weaker forces defeating larger, stronger opponents by using unconventional tactics." Lisa had been listening quietly to the conversation while organizing her food samples. "Like David and Goliath," she said softly. "Exactly," Dr. Wong replied. "The key is finding something that Zethkar has never faced before, something that his training and experience haven't prepared him for." Jake spent the evening reviewing video recordings of Zethkar's previous duels. The Saurian warrior moved with deadly precision, his attacks flowing from one to the next in practiced combinations. His opponents rarely lasted long enough to mount any kind of effective defense. "He's incredibly skilled," Jake said as he watched the footage, "but there's something almost mechanical about his fighting style, like he's following a predetermined pattern." Amy looked over his shoulder at the screen. "That makes sense. Warrior cultures often develop very formal fighting techniques that are passed down through generations. It makes them predictable in some ways." "Predictable how?" Jake asked. "If you know the pattern, you can anticipate what comes next," Amy explained. "The problem is that you need to survive long enough to figure out the pattern, and then you need to be fast enough to exploit it." Jake continued watching the recordings late into the night, trying to spot any weakness in Zethkar's technique. The Saurian warrior was certainly formidable, but Amy was right about the patterns. His attacks followed recognizable sequences, and he seemed to favor certain combinations over others. The next morning brought a visit from Guide Zenth, who seemed genuinely worried about the upcoming duel. "I have spoken with the council about your situation," the alien said. "Some members feel that the challenge is unfair to your species." "What did they decide?" Jake asked. "Nothing can be changed," Guide Zenth replied sadly. "Saurian honor law is very strict. The duel must proceed as scheduled." "Is there anything else you can tell us about the rules?" Ron asked. "Any detail that might help?" Guide Zenth considered the question carefully. "The weapon selection is final once the duel begins. You must choose before entering the arena, and you cannot change your mind afterward." "What kinds of weapons do most species choose?" Dr. Wong asked. "Swords are most common," Guide Zenth replied. "Some choose spears or axes. The Crystalline Collective often uses energy blades. Most weapons are ceremonial items that have been in families for generations." After Guide Zenth left, the team returned to their preparations. Jake continued his combat training with Amy, though his progress remained limited. Dr. Wong kept researching Saurian physiology, looking for any possible weakness. Ron studied the arena layout and dueling regulations. Lisa spent most of her time in the quarter's small kitchen area, preparing meals for the team. Jake noticed that she worked with incredible precision, her knife moving in smooth, controlled motions as she cut vegetables and prepared ingredients. "You're really good at that," he said, watching her work. Lisa looked up from the cutting board where she was slicing onions. "I've been cooking since I was a kid. My grandmother taught me that the knife is the most important tool in the kitchen." "How so?" Jake asked, genuinely curious. "Everything in cooking starts with proper knife work," Lisa explained, demonstrating with a quick series of cuts. "The way you hold it, the way you move it, the angle of each cut. It all has to be precise, or the food doesn't turn out right." The day of the duel arrived faster than Jake had hoped. He stood at the entrance to the grand arena, holding the kitchen knife that had become his weapon of choice. The simple blade felt comfortable in his hand after 2 days of intensive training with Lisa, but he still wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his life. The arena was enormous, carved from a single piece of crystal that amplified sound and light in spectacular ways. Thousands of alien spectators filled the seats, representing dozens of different species from across the galaxy. Their excited chatter created a symphony of strange sounds that echoed through the crystalline structure. "Remember what we practiced," Lisa said quietly as she stood beside him. She had insisted on being present for the final preparations, even though spectators were not normally allowed in the staging area. Jake nodded, running through the techniques she had taught him over the past 2 days. The footwork, the grip, the way to read his opponent's movements and find openings. It was unlike any combat training he had ever received, but it felt more natural than the traditional fighting techniques Amy had tried to teach him. "Keep your movements small and controlled," Lisa continued. "Don't try to overpower him. Use precision instead of strength." Dr. Wong approached with her tablet full of last-minute research. "I've been studying the arena layout. The crystal floor will be slippery in some places, especially where the lighting creates heat spots. That might work to your advantage if you're more comfortable with precise footwork." Amy handed Jake a small communication device. "We'll be watching from the observation deck. If you need to forfeit, just say the word and we'll find a way to get you out of there." Jake shook his head. "There's no backing down now. Too much depends on this." Ron appeared at his side, looking nervous but trying to hide it. "The betting odds are not in your favor, Commander. Some species are offering 1,000 to 1 against you winning." "Thanks for the encouragement," Jake said with a weak smile. Guide Zenth entered the staging area, his blue skin even paler than usual. "It is time," he announced. "The council and all spectators are assembled. Zethkar is already in the arena, performing his traditional pre-combat rituals." Jake took a deep breath and looked at his team one last time. These people had become like family to him during their journey to the stars, and now he was about to risk everything on a plan that most of the galaxy would consider insane. "Whatever happens in there," he said, "I want you all to know that representing humanity alongside you has been the greatest honor of my life." Lisa stepped forward and placed her hand on his shoulder. "You're going to do fine. Trust your instincts and remember everything we practiced." Jake walked through the tunnel that led to the arena floor. The sound of the crowd grew louder with each step, and the crystal walls began to glow brighter as he approached the combat area. When he finally emerged into the arena proper, the noise was overwhelming. The crowd's reaction to his appearance was immediate and obvious. Laughter, chittering, sounds that might have been amusement, and what sounded like disappointed groans filled the air. Jake could see alien spectators pointing at his simple kitchen knife and making gestures that needed no translation. Zethkar stood in the center of the arena, an imposing figure that seemed even larger than Jake remembered. The Saurian warrior wore minimal armor that left his powerful muscles visible, and his green scales gleamed under the arena's lights. In his hands, he held the Blade of Conquest, a ceremonial sword that looked like it had been forged specifically for killing. The weapon was nearly 4 feet long, with a curved blade that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Energy patterns flowed along its surface, and Jake could see small symbols carved into the metal that probably represented Zethkar's previous victories. "So," Zethkar said as Jake approached, his voice carrying easily across the arena, "the human has chosen a cooking utensil as his weapon. How fitting!" The crowd erupted in what Jake assumed was laughter. The sound came from dozens of different species, creating a cacophony that made him feel very small and very alone. "This blade has served humanity for thousands of years," Jake replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's fed our families, built our communities, and helped us survive when times were hard." Zethkar's yellow eyes narrowed. "Pretty words, human. Let us see if your cooking knife can do more than cut vegetables." Arbitrator Vlex, the floating jellyfish-like referee, drifted between them. Its translation device crackled to life. "The rules have been explained to both participants. Combat continues until one yields, is incapacitated, or dies. Energy barriers will protect the spectators, but offer no protection to the combatants. Are both fighters ready?" Jake gripped his kitchen knife and nodded. The blade felt right in his hand, familiar. After hours of practice with Lisa, he had learned to hold it the way she did when working in the kitchen. With his fingers positioned for maximum control rather than maximum power, Zethkar raised the blade of conquest above his head in a traditional salute. "I am ready to claim my 200th victory. Combat begins now," Arbitrator Vlex announced. Floating quickly away from the center of the arena, Zethkar's opening move was exactly what Jake had expected from studying the recordings of previous duels. The Saurian warrior charged forward with incredible speed, his massive sword held high for a devastating downward strike that had ended countless battles in seconds. Jake did not try to meet the charge or dodge to either side. Instead, he dropped into the low, balanced stance that Lisa had taught him, the same position she used when working at the cutting board for long periods. His feet were positioned for quick, precise movements rather than dramatic leaps or lunges. Zethkar's blade descended toward him. Jake stepped sideways with a small, economical movement that took him just out of range. The Saurian sword struck the crystal floor with tremendous force, sending sparks flying and creating a deep gouge in the arena surface. The crowd's laughter died away as they realized the human had avoided the attack completely. Jake could hear confused murmuring from the spectators as they tried to understand what they had just witnessed. Zethkar recovered quickly and launched into a series of powerful horizontal swings, each one capable of cutting a human in half. But Jake was no longer where the attacks were aimed. He moved with the same fluid precision that Lisa used in the kitchen, his feet following patterns that had been drilled into his muscle memory over the past 2 days. "Stand still and fight," Zethkar growled as his attacks continued to strike empty air. Jake said nothing, focusing entirely on the rhythm of movement that Lisa had taught him. She had explained that working in a kitchen required constant awareness of your surroundings, the ability to move efficiently in tight spaces, and perfect timing to avoid accidents with hot surfaces and sharp objects. The techniques translated surprisingly well to combat. Jake found himself anticipating Zethkar's attacks not through military training, but through the same kind of spatial awareness that kept a cook from burning themselves on an oven or cutting their fingers while chopping vegetables. Zethkar's fighting style was impressive but predictable. Like most formal martial arts, it followed established patterns that had been refined over centuries. The Saurian warrior telegraphed his attacks through subtle changes in posture and grip, just as Lisa had taught Jake to read the signs that told him when food was ready to be flipped or stirred. After several minutes of unsuccessful attacks, Zeth stepped back and studied his opponent with new respect. "You move strangely, human. This is not any fighting style I have encountered before." "That's because it's not a fighting style," Jake replied, settling back into his balanced stance. "It's how humans work with tools." The crowd had grown quieter as they realized that something unexpected was happening. The human was not only surviving against the galaxy's greatest warrior, but he seemed completely comfortable doing so. Zeth single quotes KAR changed his approach, using feints and misdirection to try to break through Jake's defense. But Jake had spent 2 days learning to read the subtle signs that indicated when ingredients were about to overcook or when a sauce was ready to be seasoned. Reading Zethkar's intentions was not that different. When the Saurian warrior feinted to the left and then attacked from the right, Jake was already moving to intercept. His kitchen knife, held in the same grip Lisa used for precise cutting work, intercepted Zethkar's wrist just as the alien's claws extended for a raking attack. The cut was shallow but perfectly placed, severing a tendon that controlled Zethkar's grip strength. The Saurian warrior's roar of pain and surprise echoed through the arena as the blade of conquest wavered in his weakened hand. The crowd fell completely silent. For the first time in his career, Zethkar had been wounded by an opponent. Jake stepped back, maintaining his defensive stance. The kitchen knife had performed exactly as Lisa had promised it would. Designed for precision cutting rather than brute force, it had found the exact spot needed to disable his opponent's primary weapon hand. "Impossible," Zethkar snarled, switching the blade of conquest to his other hand. "No one has ever drawn my blood in combat. Maybe you've never fought anyone who knew how to use their tools properly," Jake replied. He could see his team in the observation deck, their faces showing a mixture of amazement and hope. The silence in the grand arena lasted for what felt like an eternity. Jake stood over Zethkar with the kitchen knife still held at the Saurian's throat, hardly believing what had just happened. He had actually defeated the galaxy's greatest warrior using nothing more than the techniques Lisa had taught him for preparing food. Then the arena exploded into chaos. Thousands of alien spectators erupted from their seats, creating a cacophony of sounds that Jake had never heard before. Some species roared, others chittered excitedly, and a few made harmonious singing noises that might have been their version of cheering. The crystal walls amplified every sound until the noise was almost overwhelming. Arbitrator Vlex floated quickly to the center of the arena, his jellyfish-like form pulsing with bright colors. "The duel is concluded," his translator announced above the crowd noise. "Victory goes to Jake Harrison of Earth." Jake carefully moved the kitchen knife away from Zethkar's throat and stepped back. The Saurian warrior slowly rose to his feet, his yellow eyes never leaving Jake's face. For a moment, Jake worried that the alien might try to continue the fight despite his formal surrender. Instead, Zethkar did something completely unexpected. He dropped to one knee and bowed his head in what was clearly a gesture of deep respect. "I have fought warriors from 17 worlds," Zethkar said, his voice carrying clearly through the arena. "I have defeated creatures stronger, faster, and more skilled than myself. But I have never faced an opponent who thought so differently about combat." Jake felt his legs wobble slightly as the adrenaline from the fight began to wear off. "I wasn't thinking about combat at all," he admitted. "I was just trying to use my tools properly." Zethkar's head came up, and Jake saw something that might have been amusement in the alien's eyes. "That is exactly why you won. Human, I was fighting a duel, but you were simply working." The crowd's noise gradually died down as the spectators realized that something significant was happening on the arena floor. Jake could see representatives from dozens of alien species leaning forward in their seats, trying to hear every word of the conversation between him and Zeth. "Your technique with that blade," Zethkar continued, gesturing toward the kitchen knife in Jake's hand. "Where did you learn such precision?" "From my ship's cook," Jake replied. "She taught me how to use a knife the way humans have always used them, as a tool for creating rather than destroying." Zethkar stood slowly, favoring the arm that Jake had wounded during the fight. "A cook! You learned to defeat me from someone who prepares food." "Lisa Martinez is one of the most skilled people I know," Jake said firmly. "She can feed a crew of 50 people with ingredients that most would consider impossible to work with. She taught me that the knife is not about power, it's about understanding what you're trying to accomplish." The Saurian warrior looked down at the blade of conquest lying on the arena floor. The ceremonial weapon looked almost pathetic now, its elaborate design and energy enhancements having proved useless against simple, practical technique. "I have spent my entire life learning to fight," Zethkar said quietly. "My weapon was forged by master craftsmen and has been in my family for 7 generations. But your simple tool, in the hands of someone who truly understood its use, made all of that meaningless." Jake picked up the kitchen knife and looked at it carefully. The blade showed no damage from the fight, though it would need cleaning before Lisa could use it again for food preparation. "This knife has probably fed more people than your sword has fought," he said. "Maybe that makes it more powerful in its own way." From the observation deck, Jake could see his team celebrating. Dr. Wang was jumping up and down while taking notes on a tablet. probably already planning the scientific paper she would write about human combat applications. Amy was shaking her head in amazement, clearly impressed by the effectiveness of unconventional tactics. Ron was grinning widely and making gestures that looked like he was explaining something to nearby alien spectators. But it was Lisa's reaction that meant the most to Jake. The ship's cook was standing quietly with tears in her eyes, not because she was sad, but because she understood exactly what had just happened. Her grandmother's teachings about knife work and precision had just changed the course of human history. Guide Zinth appeared at Jake's side, his blue skin now showing a healthier color than it had in days. Commander Harrison, the Galactic Council, requests your immediate presence. This victory has created a situation that requires urgent discussion. Jake nodded and started to walk toward the arena exit, but Zethkar's voice stopped him. Human, the Saurian warrior called out, "What is your cook's name?" "Lisa Martinez," Jake replied. "Why do you ask?" "Because I would like to learn from her," Zethkar said seriously. "If she can teach knife techniques that defeated centuries of warrior training, then she possesses knowledge that I need to understand." Jake smiled at the thought of the galaxy's greatest fighter asking for cooking lessons. "I'll pass along your request." As they left the arena, Jake could hear the crowd's excited chatter continuing. He caught fragments of conversation from various alien species, most of whom seemed to be discussing what they had just witnessed with a mixture of confusion and respect. The walk to the council chambers felt different than it had a few days earlier. Alien spectators who had barely noticed the human delegation before now watched Jake with obvious interest. Some even made gestures that he assumed were signs of respect or acknowledgement. The council chambers were filled with representatives from all 47 member species. Jake had never seen so many different types of intelligent life in one place, and under normal circumstances, he would have been overwhelmed by the experience. But after facing Zethkar in single combat, a room full of alien politicians seemed much less intimidating. The council speaker, a tall crystalline being whose body refracted light in beautiful patterns, addressed Jake directly. "Commander Harrison of Earth, your victory today has created an unprecedented situation. No species has ever defeated Zethkar in formal combat. I understand that this might be unexpected," Jake replied carefully, "but the duel was conducted according to established rules and witnessed by thousands of spectators." "Indeed," the speaker continued, "the legitimacy of your victory is not in question. What we must now discuss is its implications for humanity's application to join the Galactic Council." Jake felt his heart rate increase. This was the moment that would determine Earth's future among the stars. "What kind of implications?" A new voice spoke from across the chamber. It belonged to a representative of the Andromedan Collective, a species that looked like walking trees with silver bark. "For 50 years, we have used combat prowess as one measure of a species' worthiness for council membership. Your victory suggests that humans possess capabilities we had not previously recognized." Another representative, this one from a species Jake didn't recognize, added their own comment. "More importantly, your approach to the challenge demonstrates the kind of innovative thinking that the galaxy needs. You solved a problem that no one else had been able to solve, using methods that no one else had considered." The council speaker's crystalline form pulsed with different colors as it processed the various comments from around the chamber. "The question before us is not whether humans are strong enough to join our community. Today's events have proven that conclusively. The question is whether we are wise enough to welcome a species that thinks so differently from the rest of us." Jake realized that this was his opportunity to speak for all of humanity. The words he chose now would shape how his species was viewed for generations to come. "Members of the council," he began, "humans don't want to join your community because we think we're better than you. We want to join because we think we can learn from you and contribute something meaningful in return." He held up the kitchen knife, which he had been carrying throughout the meeting. "This tool represents thousands of years of human development, but not for war or conquest. We created it to feed our families, to build our communities, and to take care of each other." The chamber fell quiet as the various alien representatives considered his words. "Today I used this knife in combat, but that's not what it was made for," Jake continued. "Humans are not a warrior species. We're builders, creators, and problem solvers. We don't want to dominate the galaxy. We want to help make it a better place for everyone. A representative from the Saurian hegemony, who looked similar to Zeth, but wore elaborate robes instead of armor, stood to address the chamber. Zethkar has sent word from the medical facility. He wishes the council to know that he supports humanity's membership application without reservation. On what grounds? The council speaker asked. He says that any species capable of turning a cooking utensil into an instrument of honorable victory possesses exactly the kind of resourcefulness and creativity that the galaxy needs. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. Having Zethkar's support would carry enormous weight with the council, especially among the more militaristic species. The debate continued for several hours, with representatives from various species raising questions and concerns about human membership, but Jake could sense that the mood in the chamber had shifted significantly, where before there had been skepticism. 6 months after the duel that changed everything, Jake Harrison stood in the galley of the U.S. horizon and watched something he never could have imagined. Zethkar, the former champion of the Galactic Combat League, was carefully dicing onions under Lisa Martinez's watchful instruction. "Your knife angle is still too steep," Lisa said patiently. "Remember, you want to use the natural curve of your knuckles as a guide. The blade should follow that line exactly." The massive Saurian warrior, who had terrorized opponents across 17 worlds, adjusted his grip on the kitchen knife with the concentration of a student taking his final exam. His powerful claws, once weapons of destruction, now moved with surprising delicacy as he tried to achieve the perfect julienne cut that Lisa had demonstrated. "Like this?" Zethkar asked, his deep voice unusually quiet in the small kitchen space. Lisa examined his work and nodded approvingly. "Much better! You're learning to let the knife do the work instead of forcing it. That's the key to precision." Jake smiled as he watched the unlikely pair. After the duel, Zethkar had formally requested permission to serve aboard a human vessel so he could study their techniques firsthand. The Galactic Council had approved the cultural exchange, and Zethkar had spent the past few months learning everything he could about human approaches to problem-solving. Dr. Wong looked up from her tablet where she had been documenting the cooking lesson. "This is fascinating from an anthropological perspective. A warrior culture learning peaceful techniques from what they previously considered a primitive species." "We're not teaching him to be peaceful," Lisa corrected gently. "We're teaching him to think differently about tools and precision. What he does with that knowledge is up to him." Amy Davis entered the galley carrying a message pad. "Commander, we've got incoming communications from 3 different species requesting cultural exchanges. They all specifically want to learn about human culinary techniques." Jake took the message pad and scanned through the requests. "The Crystalline Collective wants to send a delegation to study human precision methodologies. The Andromedan Assembly is requesting training in adaptive tool utilization, and the Aquatic Federation wants to learn about creative problem solving through traditional practices. They're not really interested in cooking," Ron Blake said from where he sat reviewing technical specifications for new ship systems. "They want to understand how humans think." The kitchen knife thing opened their eyes to something they hadn't considered before. Lisa wiped her hands on her apron and turned to address the group. "You know what's funny? My grandmother taught me these techniques when I was 8 years old. She said that if you could master a knife, you could master any tool. I never thought it would apply to anything outside a kitchen." Zethkar looked up from his cutting board where he had been practicing his knife work. "Your grandmother was wiser than she knew. The principles of precision, patience, and understanding your tools apply to everything. I spent decades learning to use weapons, but I never truly understood the tools themselves." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "When I fought with the blade of conquest, I was using it to impose my will through force," Zethkar explained. "But when I work with this kitchen knife, I must understand what the tool wants to do naturally. I cannot force it to cut properly. I must work with it, not against it." Dr. Wong nodded enthusiastically. "That's exactly what made Jake's victory so significant. He wasn't trying to beat you at your own game. He was playing an entirely different game, one where cooperation with tools mattered more than dominance over opponents. The communication system chimed, and Guide Zent's voice filled the galley. "Commander Harrison, you have an urgent message from the Galactic Council. They are requesting your presence at Nexus Prime for a special session." Jake exchanged glances with his team. "What kind of special session?" "The message does not specify," Guide Zenth replied. "But representatives from all 47 member species will be present. It appears to be a matter of considerable importance." 2 days later, Jake found himself back in the council chambers on Nexus Prime, but this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of skepticism and condescension, he sensed excitement and anticipation from the assembled alien representatives. The council speaker's crystalline form pulsed with bright colors as it addressed the gathering. "Commander Harrison, 6 months ago, your species was granted provisional membership in this council. Today, we are here to discuss making that membership permanent." Jake felt his heart rate increase. Full membership had been expected to take years, not months. "May I ask what has prompted this accelerated timeline?" A representative from the Saurian hegemony stood to respond. "The cultural exchanges initiated by your victory have produced remarkable results. 17 different species have reported significant improvements in their problem-solving capabilities after studying human techniques." Another voice spoke from across the chamber. This time it was the representative from the Crystalline Collective. "Our engineers have achieved a 30% improvement in manufacturing precision by applying principles learned from human food preparation methods. The Andromedon Assembly has reduced construction time on orbital platforms by 2% using adaptive techniques derived from human cooking practices," added another representative. Jake was stunned. He had never imagined that Lisa's knife techniques would have applications beyond the kitchen, let alone across multiple alien civilizations. The council speaker continued, "But the most significant development concerns the Galactic Combat League itself. Zethkar has proposed fundamental changes to the competition structure based on his studies of human approaches to tool use." "What kind of changes?" Jake asked. Zethkar's voice came from a communication device. As he was still aboard the Horizon continuing his studies with Lisa, "I have petitioned the League to add new categories of competition that emphasize precision, creativity, and problem solving rather than pure combat prowess. The goal would be to celebrate the diverse ways that different species approach challenges." "The proposal has been approved unanimously," the council speaker announced. "Beginning next year, the Galactic Combat League will become the Galactic Skills League, with competitions in everything from precision craftsmanship to innovative problem-solving." Jake realized that the simple act of using a kitchen knife in a duel had sparked a fundamental shift in how the galaxy viewed competition and achievement. Instead of focusing solely on who was strongest or most aggressive, they were beginning to value different types of excellence. "There is one more matter to discuss," the council speaker said. "Several species have requested that Earth establish a formal academy for teaching human techniques to other civilizations. They are offering significant resources to support such an institution." Jake thought about Lisa, who had become the most famous teacher in the galaxy without ever leaving the Horizon's kitchen. "I would need to discuss this with my government and with the people who would actually be doing the teaching." "Of course," the speaker replied. "But please know that this opportunity represents something unprecedented in galactic history. Never before has a newly admitted species been asked to take such a central role in interspecies education." After the council session ended, Jake found himself in a quiet observation lounge overlooking Nexus Prime's central plaza, the same place where his collision with Zethkar had started. This entire chain of events now bustled with activity as representatives from dozens of species conducted business and cultural exchanges. Dr. Wong joined him at the large window. "You know what's really amazing about all this? We didn't change the galaxy by being better at fighting or by having superior technology. We changed it by sharing something as simple as how to use a knife properly. Lisa changed it," Jake corrected. "I was just the one who happened to be holding the knife when it mattered." "Maybe," Dr. Wong said with a smile. "But you were the one who recognized that there might be another way to approach the problem. That's very human, too." Amy Davis appeared beside them. carrying news from their latest communications with Earth. Home base is very interested in the Academy proposal. They're already identifying candidates who could teach various human skills to alien species. Cooking, craftsmanship, engineering, even art and music. What about Lisa? Jake asked. Is she interested in becoming the galaxy's most famous cooking instructor? Amy grinned. She says she'd consider it, but only if they let her bring her grandmother's recipe collection. Apparently, she thinks the galaxy needs to learn about proper seasoning techniques as much as knife work. Ron Blake joined the group, looking excited about something on his data pad. Commander, I've been analyzing the reports from the species that have implemented human techniques. The improvements they're seeing aren't just in efficiency or precision. They're also reporting increased job satisfaction and reduced workplace injuries. Why would that be? Jake asked. Because human techniques emphasize working with tools instead of fighting against them, Ron explained. When you understand your equipment and use it properly, work becomes easier and safer. It's like Lisa always says, the knife wants to cut cleanly, you just have to let it. Jake looked out at the bustling plaza and thought about how much had changed in such a short time.